माननीय संघचालक जी and other revered Sangha Adhikaris and dear Swayamsevaks who are old as well as new. I am very happy to be amidst you today on the sacred occasion of Guru Puja. Straightway, I would like to enter my subject. As it was told in the beginning, Guru Puja is one of the 6 functions which Sangha observes. So the thought regarding the function, the evolution of that function, and the purpose and the meaning of Guru Puja, I would tell you in brief. First, Guru Puja is not at all new to Hindu society since times immemorial. Even if there were no Sangha, there would have been Guru Puja in Hindu society. So right from the beginning, where memory goes back, Guru Puja was there, respect to Guru, worship to Guru, seeking his blessings, then with satisfaction and confidence, enter into our daily life was the culture of our country. So, in every avenue of life, we have got a Guru. It has no caste consideration as such. Any caste belonging to high or low, even the forest dwellers who we call tribals today, they have got the concept of Guru. Whenever some good function comes, for example, marriage, the bride as well as bridegroom seek the blessings of the elders. Elders are called a Guru. Elderly people, by age, experience and effort, they are older than us, experienced. So we seek their blessings. Similarly, when we enter into any pursuit of life, we seek the blessings of the persons who have mastered that branch of life. Suppose we want in Malayalam, there is what is called a Kalari. It is training in martial arts. I tell you specially about this. Martial arts has nothing to do with spirituality. Even then, when a person, a boy or a girl in his young age, wants to join the martial class, which is called a Kalari in Kerala, he or she prostrates before the Kalari Guru, and with Guru's blessings, the training starts. Similarly, there is Vasanta Panchami in the north and Vidyarambham in the south. When we begin our Vidya, that is what is called Vidya Arambham. Vasant Panchami, Saraswati Pujan is done and we start our education. And the person who initiates us in the primary education is called Guru. So without Guru, no activity starts according to Hindu culture and according to Hindus. This is very, very special and rarely exceptional and exists only in Hindu society. If you compare other societies, with all respect, with not an idea of criticism, whether the society is of Christians, Muslims, religiously, Europeans, Africans or Americans geographically, they have no such system. But inside Bharat, whether they are religiously So-called Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, or any sect, they have got their own gurus, and those gurus are sought for their blessings, which they definitely grant also, and with confidence, happiness, people enter into their life. So this is the background of system of guru in Bharat. And who is this guru? Why this name came as guru? In popular parlance, guru means heaviness, weighty. Weighty, weighty, guru, vajanwala. But guru here means, Sanskrit says, etymologically, guru consists of two alphabets, gu as well as ru. Gu means darkness, inertness, jadatva. Ru means that which annihilates, that which removes. So, one who removes the darkness, he is called guru. So, when we tell that we have got a guru, that guru is responsible, guru is very much concerned to remove our darkness from our hearts, inner being. In other words, guru is one who enlightens. Guru is one who enlightens. In our tradition, there is an Upanishad in which one person says he found 22 gurus. Who were those 22 gurus? And he told about beasts as well as birds. Then he says, from such and such an animal, I learnt patience. So that animal is my guru. From such and such an animal, I learnt how to act immediately. So alertness I learnt from such and such an animal. So that animal is my guru. From such and such a bird, I learnt how to see very, very, very far. So that bird is my guru regarding farsightedness. So he mentions about 22 qualities and 23 qualities provided by God to these animals as well as birds. And all those animals and birds combined become his guru. That is what Upanishad says. In short, guru means man, animal, bird, or anything which enlightens us is called a guru. So guru is sought for in our Hindu culture, and without guru, no positive activity is started. So traditionally, we have got gurus. For all castes there are gurus. For all sects there are gurus. For all religions sprung up now and then in Bharat, they have got their own gurus. So, for example, in Karnataka, there are very many castes. Caste is good or bad, that is not a question now relevant. At present, while I am speaking, whatever be now, for example, Lingayat is a caste. So, Lingayats have got a guru. The whole community has guru. Not individually, collectively, the community has guru. Similarly, another communities there, Gaud Saraswat, they also have got a guru of their own. So, any member of Gaud Saraswat community, male or female, boy or child, automatically he considers that great person as a guru. So, this way, the guru dom exists. Similarly, various sects that came up. In the later days, only Sikh religion came up. So Sikh religion has got a guru. He is Nanak Guru. Then the Guru tradition followed. 10 were their gurus. Last being Guru Gobind Singh. Similarly, all the religions, they have got their own founders and they are considered as gurus. So there also gurus are there. Similarly, religious organizations came up. For example, Arya Samaj. So Arya Samaj founder was Dayananda Saraswati. For Dayananda Saraswati is the guru, respectable, revered guru for Arya Samajis. Similarly, Ramakrishna Ashram, started by Swami Vivekananda, and Vivekananda's guru was Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So, by and large, the founder of Ramakrishna Ashram, though Swami Vivekananda, the guru of Ramakrishna Ashram is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa as well as his blessed wife Sharadamani Devi. So, there is a guru for that. So every sect also has got a guru. And to tell about modern days, Amritandamayi mission is there. All of them consider Ma Amritandamayi as their guru. So whether it is an organization or whether it is a religion old or new, or whether they are communities throughout spread throughout in India, every person they have got their own guru. And individually also, each person according to his taste, sadhana, he accepts somebody as guru, whether male or female. Guru need not be male alone. Guru can be female also. One who enlightens us need not necessarily be male alone. A female saint also can enlighten us. Male saint also can enlighten us. So, guru can be either male or female of any individual. So, individuals have got their own gurus. So, in short, the tradition of guru is widely prevalent in Bharat. So, when Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangha was started, Sangha founder Dr. Hedgewar also thought, we are right in the tradition of Hindu culture, so it will be proper and meet if Sangha also has got a guru. So he thought Sangha also should have a guru. And this thought, to explain especially to our new brethren, Sangha did not accept Guru Bhagavad Vaj on the very first day of its foundation. Sangha was founded on Vijayadashmi Day 1925. On that day, Sangha had not accepted anything or anybody as Guru. As Sangha started and Sangha work struck roots, and it was certain that Sangha would not have an infant death. About 1 year passed or 2 years passed. Then about 1927 or so, after the starting of Rashtriya Swayamsevak, 2 years, this Guru Puja was thought of by the founder, Dr. Hedgewar. So one day, during the course of daily meet, Sangha Chaka means when we come, where we come every day. So Sangha Chaka had taken roots. That has become the very structure and form of Sangha. So when one day Sangha Chaka was just over finally, just now in the beginning we were given instructions. Similarly, by the end of Chaka, we are being instructed if something is to be told specially. So on the previous day of Guru Puja, as we know today, all the Sangha Swayamsevaks were gathered immediately after the dispersal called Vikira. And Pujaniya Dr. Hedgewar, founder of Sangha, said, according to we Hindus, tomorrow is Ashadha Paurnima, which is called by us Guru Puja. And on Guru Puja day, we are expected to respect and worship our Guru. So tomorrow we will have Guru Puja. So please come prepared with a few flowers And to Guru, according to our tradition, we offer Guru Dakshina also. So whatever money, big or small, to offer to Guru, which is called Guru Dakshina, you come. And then dispersal was there. No further instruction. Then each Swayam Sevak, for last 1.5 years he was coming on Sanghasthan. They began to consult each other, discuss with each other, who will be Guru of Sangha. Dr. Hedgewar has told tomorrow is Guru Puja. Whom we are going to revere and worship? Who will be the Guru of Sangha? Naturally, boys and youths, according to their taste and standard, they said, undoubtedly Dr. Hedgewar, he founded Sangha. So what do you mean? No other person other than Dr. Hedgewar is our Guru. Then the other men said, right, after all, he takes care of us. He comes to our homes when we are sick. So next to father and mother, he loves us. So he is rightly our Guru. Absolutely right. There was no voice of dissent at all. And majority of them thought that Dr. Hedgewar will be worshipped next day as Guru of the function. There was already the background, as I told you. Arya Samaj, Dayananda Saraswati is worshipped. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramakrishna Mission, Ramakrishna is worshipped. So the other organizations also. So there is nothing unnatural if Sangha worships Dr. Hedgewar. That was the thought of normal Swayam Sevak. Next day they gathered on Sanghasthan and expectantly everybody was sitting. By the time, another thing was there. Earlier also, Bhagavad Dhwaj was hoisted every day on Sanghasthan. Every day on Sanghasthan. But nobody had told them or claimed that that was the Guru. So just as on previous day, Bhagavad Dhwaj was hoisted next day also. And after primary exercises, all were seated in lines in Sampata. Then founder of Sangha, Dr. Hedgewar, came and said, I am going to explain to you about Guru Puja. And then he said, it was a very short speech. And I tell you the very summary of what he said. He said, Sangha has accepted this Bhagavad Dhwaj of ours as Guru. Sangha has not accepted any individual, big or small, as Guru. So, I start the function today. I myself will first worship the Guru, and all you one by one in line come and worship the Guru. And first Guru Pujan was done by the very founder of Sangha, Dr. Hedgewar, and he offered flowers also. Then others followed him. Then only, before announcing, only by action, everybody understood that Dr. Hedgewar was not the Guru, though the founder, and Bhagavad Dhwaj the Guru for all, including the founder. So that is how Guru Puja came into existence in Sangha. Right from that day, all of us Swayam Sevaks began to consider not Dr. Hedgewar, but Bhagavad Dhwaj as Guru of all Swayam Sevaks, including Dr. Hedgewar. This is the story of the birth of Guru system, Bhagavad Dhwaj in Sangha. Now, the question arises, why did Dr. Hedgewar choose this Bhagavad Dhwaj as Guru? As in the Amrit Vachan cited by him, No person is perfect. Agreed. But suppose at that time we had accepted Dr. Hedgewar. Swayamsevaks of those days did not find any imperfectness in Dr. Hedgewar. He was a perfect individual. There would have been absolutely no objection if Dr. Hedgewar is accepted as Guru. But Dr. Hedgewar himself did not want this because he wanted the entire organization to be impersonal. It should not be person oriented. And what was the secret? Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh was expected to be a movement in Bharat to bring about the reawakening of Bharat and to bring about the renaissance of the Hindu society. Hindu society had been decadent, desperate, dilapidated, disappointed, defeated, degraded, and ultimately dependent on foreign powers during the previous 1,000 years. So this decadent society, moribund society, was to be rejuvenated, revived. So a renaissance expected in Bharat. And who was to harbinger that renaissance? We, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh was to be a movement, an organization, not an institution, circumscribed, limited, built up by mortar and stone. So institution is always limited. Organization is always limitless, growing. Sangh was conceived as an organization, a movement, and an organization cannot have a person as Guru. An institution can have a person as Guru because institution space limited, spot is limited, members are limited, aims are limited. According to constitution, the numbers are limited when you are registering yourself. For that, you can expect a Guru, but a movement which grows as the population grows, which grows as the problems come up, which grows as we solve the problems, and which meets the danger as and when it comes, and solves the problems. Such a creative organization cannot have a one personality whose lifespan is limited as Guru. So that Guru will go. So we will put another Guru, another person. But ultimately, we will be conditioned by the whims and fancies or the qualities or non-qualities of that particular person. So Dr. Hedgewar thought with farsightedness that this movement called Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh should not have a personality as a Guru, not because personality may be expected to be imperfect. Even if one is perfect, Guru should be impersonal. That was his thought. So because it is a movement. Now this impersonal Guru, how to choose the Guru? Then he found out the right thing to be Guru is the very ideal. Ideal is impersonal. Now we all have come to Sangh because of this Join RSS campaign, or because of the telephonic contact, or because we read something and thought for ourselves and joined Sangh. Whatever it be, we have joined Sangh based on ideology and idealism of ours. A person must have been instrumental. He must have been instrumental because he is your bosom friend. and he must have convinced you. So a person can be instrumental. He can be your motivator. He can be your mentor. But ideologically speaking, ideal is the guru, not the person. So Dr. Hedgewar thought, ideal should be guru, the Sangha ideal. The aims and objects for which Sangha came into existence shall themselves guide us. So ideal guides us. One who guides us is Guru, and if ideal guides us, ideal becomes the Guru. So ideal is the Guru of Sangha, number one. Then coming down on practical grounds, ideal by itself has no form. To speak in terms of chemistry, it has neither order nor form nor weight, neither it is gas, nor it is solid, nor it is liquid. So ideal is amorphous. Still, it has got a life force to prompt us, to guide us, and to goad us. So ideal has got a force. It is just like, to tell you an example, Atma. You don't see Atma. What is its weight, we don't know. What is its color and smell, we don't know. But it does exist. Similarly, ideal does exist, though it is amorphous, though it has no smell, form or odor, it does exist. So that ideal is our Guru. But for a practical man, that amorphous, looking into void, looking into vacuum, looking into endless nothingness, it is not possible. He wants some material object upon which he can concentrate, which he can see. There should be a material object. So, ideal should be materialized. Amorphous ideal should be made into a form. So, Dr. Ji thought, who can represent our ideal other than a person who is immortal? So, that thing which represents our ideal should be as immortal as the ideal. Ideal is immortal. So that which we choose also should be immortal. So from that point of view, he thought of a material object which can represent the ideal. It is just like God idolized into Murti or Vigraha. We know God is Adi Madhyanta Vihina, beginningless, middleness, and endless. God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, throughout, limitless, infinite energy is God. But it is for very, very highest souls, rarest souls, to reach those sublime heights. We are all poor human beings. So we want to concentrate. So man, in his wisdom, found out idols, murti, to represent what is limitless. So a limited form called idol to represent a limitless is the Murti. And through Murti Puja, we do Ishvara Puja. Similarly, this ideal of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which by itself is without form, had to be reduced to a form. And Dr. Hedgewar then thought, Bhagavad Dhwaj, the saffron flag, can be an ideal. That is how he chose Bhagava flag. Now, why Bhagava flag? Why Bhagava flag? There are very many reasons. Historical reason, cultural reasons are there. First, I will tell you about the historical reason. Historical reason is in Vedas, representation of this color and symbol come. Saffron means Bhagava. In southern languages, we say Kavi. Geruva. North India, they say Geruva. In English, they say saffron. Why they say saffron? There is saffron flower in Kashmir. Its color is called saffron. So, saffron color, Bhagava flag. So, that color is depicted in Vedas also, because in absence of fire, this color is represented by a cloth. Fire is represented, the Hindu culture. Fire is very, very, very important. The very first sentence of the first religious book of the world, called Vedas, is Agni Mile Purohitam. Agni Mile Purohitam. And that Agni, what is the color of fire? Color of fire is color of Bhagava flag. So Bhagava flag represents the yajna of ours, the sacrifice of ours. So Bhagava flag represents. Similarly, what is the color of rising sun? It is Bhagava. What is the color of setting sun? It is Bhagava. So, sun and Agni, they give light to us. Both these things, elements, sun as well as Agni, they are represented by this saffron color. So, when we idolized light into a form, this Bhagava flag came up. So, Bhagava flag represents Agni Deva as well as Surya Deva. Then again I will tell you, what is the etymology of Agni in Sanskrit? I need not quote Sanskrit, but the meaning I will tell you. Agni is that one which always moves and sees up. You see the flame of Agni, fire. Suppose you take a torch, burning torch, and keep it downward, even then flame will go up. The flame of Agni never goes down. It always goes up. And the flame that which always goes up, because of that, it is called Agni etymologically. Those who know Sanskrit can find out the actual etymology. So always you look up, you look up. You are always forward looking, upward looking. And good symbol for a decadent society which wants to rise up. So that is there. Similarly, sun you see, during victory and during defeat, it never loses hope. In victory, what is the color? Same is the color in defeat also. So according to Bhagavan Krishna, when he says, Jaya Jayo Sukha Dukkhe Same Kritva Labha Labho Jaya Jayo Tasma Duttishta Kaunteya Yuddhaya Kritanishchaya, he says. Think with equanimity, Jaya and Apajaya, victory as well as defeat, happiness as well as sorrow. You just see, Sukha, Dukkha, Jaya, Ajaya, everything you see. So that equanimity is there in the sun. So when he rises up, he looks what he looks when he sets up also. So during the fight as well as during peace, we should have equanimity, and that equanimity is represented by this Bhagava color. So because of that, our culture always says Bhagava is very fine. Then another thing, Agni, it is called Pavaka. Agni is called Pavaka, that which purifies, that which makes everything pavitra is called Pavak in Hindi and Sanskrit. So Agni is one who purifies everything. Anything you put in fire, it gets purified. So the great purifier is Agni. And we want such a Guru who takes away our darkness and purifies our life, which otherwise must have been or might have been sinful or in the wrong direction. So such a guide should be there, eternal purifier called fire. And that verily is the color of Bhagava. So this Bhagava flag represents the values of our culture. And I told you about yajna. What does yajna means? We should give ahuti. We should give ahuti. That means we should tarpan. Tarpan means arpan. Arpan means samarpan. Samarpan means dedication. Samarpan means unreserved dedication. Unconditional dedication is called samarpan. That is the yajna. And if your whole life has to be a yajna, you should have the quality of dedication, sacrifice, and out of that you get the satisfaction. So these are verily the qualities which Dr. Hedgewar wanted to inculcate in all Swayam Sevaks. How can Sangh grow? Without dedication, Sangh cannot grow. Without sacrificing the pleasures of modern life, Sangh cannot grow. So we have to dedicate our life. We have to sacrifice which is not required to us. And this dedication, the color of the dedication is the color of Agni, which is called Bhagava. So Dr. Hedgewar accepted this Bhagava flag as the Guru of ours. So that is why I told you the historical reason apart, cultural and dharmic reason is this great quality which is inculcated in us by the very color of Bhagava, Agni as well as Surya. So we did not have any symbol upon it, any emblem, some word or some emblem, because emblem and word gives you a distinct identity separate from others. When you write, say for example, X mission, you put a seal on that Bhagava, then the Bhagava flag belongs to that particular organization. If it is Ramakrishna Mission seal, evidently the Bhagava flag is of Ramakrishna Mission. If it is of Chinmaya Mission, evidently it is of Chinmaya Mission. But the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh as conceived by Dr. Hedgewar was to be in future the entire organized society. Entire organized society was the conception of Dr. Hedgewar. So he did not want the Sangh organization as one to be within the society. On the other hand, the one of an organized society. So the entire organized society was the conception. So he did not want any separating symbol. So the flag of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh Bhagavad Dhwaj has no emblem upon it. Any piece of cloth purchased from shop and properly in the form knit together, and after it comes to Sanghasthan we give pranam, it becomes Sangha flag. No other symbol or no other emblem. So that was the flag which the doctor had given. Then coming to history, I said you just see, even today in our printing pictures, you see, many times Arjun's Ratha, chariot is printed in every book of Bhagavad Gita. What is the color of the flag? The color of the flag is Bhagava. Similarly, Valmiki Ramayana pictures are there by Gita Press. They were not instructed by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. But what is the color of the flag printed by Gita Press in Valmiki Ramayana? It is this color. Similarly, you see, up to the advent of British, every Raja's flag, whether it is Mysore Rajas or Travancore Rajas, the color was, some shade must have been different, but it is almost akin to Bhagavad. So historically, all the kings of our land, they had this Bhagavad flag. And to distinguish or identify themselves, they had various symbols personally chosen by them. So Arjuna on his flag had chosen monkey. So he is called a Kapidhwaja. Another person had called crocodile. So he is called Makaradhwaja. So Makaradhwaja, color being same, the symbol was different, and thereafter they were known. So throughout Bharat historically, all Rajas had this Bhagava color. Number two, and all the sannyasis, where they belong to Kerala, Tamil Nadu or North, they had one color. Now Sri Shankar became sannyas, took sannyas from Kerala. So did he have any other color other than Bhagava? Being a Keralite? No. Whether it is sannyasi from Kerala, Shankaracharya, whether he is some other person from Tamil Nadu, or whether he is some other person from North, once they take sannyas, then every color is gone, everybody is in Bhagava, Geruva. So it is the color of our spirituality. It is the color of sacrifice. It is the color of selflessness. It is the color of rising towards Godhood. It is the color of working for the entire society as one human family. So that is the color spiritually and culturally. So in short, the Bhagavad color represents the Kshatriyahood of our land and the Brahmatva of our land and the worldly mission, eternal mission of our Bharat. So Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh founder rightly thought that this should be our color of flag, and he chose Bhagava flag. That is how much thought it must have given. That you see. Then I will tell you all inclusiveness and eternalness of it. Bhagavad Dhwaj, it cuts across all the divisions of geography, cult, and different shades of philosophy. Now Lingayats are there. Their philosophy has got a different shade, but their sannyasi's color is the same. Sringeri, Advaita Acharyas, the shade of philosophy is different from that of Lingayat. But the color of the cloth of Sringeri Swami and the color of the cloth of Lingayat Swami is the same. Then there are Madhvayiks, Vishveshatirtha. Dvaita philosophy is different from Advaita philosophy. But the color of Sringeri Shankaracharya's cloth and the color of Vishveshatirtha's cloth is same. So this Bhagava color is all inclusive, Bhagava color. It represents everything throughout, all. So this all inclusiveness is one good thing. Then no death. First when I began I said personality has got an end. When it is impersonal, it is prevalent throughout, perennial. And how this perennial comes? Man dies. Ideal doesn't die. Man dies, but ideal doesn't die. So Bhagava, if it represents ideal, it goes on as posterity changes. Bhagava goes on. Man may come, man may go, but the Bhagava goes on forever. It goes on forever. It is just like the mission of Sri Ramachandra is handed over to us today in this year 2020. So that mission doesn't change. It is something like, I will give you an example of sports activity. 4 into 400 meters race is there. Tracks are drawn in circle, the entire ground. A very big circle with 4 or 5 tracks for these athletes to run. It is there. And team consists of 4. And 1/4 of the circle, 4 persons of batch stand there. A, B, C, D. So the person who start, 5 persons will start. They have got a baton in their hand. They will run very, very, very fast. After finishing 1/4 circle, their batchmates stand there. They pass on this baton to him and they cease to run, and the baton holders begin to run. When they reach half, then the second batch stops and third batch begins to run with baton in their hand. So when you run the whole round, who has run the whole round? If the batch consists of 4, none of the 4 has run the whole ground. But it is the baton in the hand of the first, passed on to the second, passed on to the third, passed on to the fourth, that has run full round. So baton has run the full round, whereas batchmates have run only 1/4. So here batchmate is the individual whose span is human span. But the baton in his hand is the Bhagava, which Bhagavan Sri Ram passed it on to Sri Krishna, which Bhagavan Sri Krishna passed it on to next generation. Then it passed on to next generation. Then the Rana Pratap generation to Shivaji's generation. Shivaji's generation to later generation. Then later generation to Dr. Hedgewar. So the same baton which was in the hands of Bhagavan Sri Ram is in the hands of today's Dr. Hedgewar. So the baton has passed on, and that baton is the Bhagava flag. So this is how the permanency of the Bhagava flag, even though individual is not permanent. So this Bhagavad Dhwaj is accepted by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So, and this Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, what are the qualities that it expects of a Swayamsevak? Any Tom, Dick and Harry cannot simply become a Swayam Sevak without getting enlightened himself nationally, culturally, and without changing bad habits, and until he becomes a man of character. So a Swayam Sevak is a selfless, self-inspired, national-minded, national-dedicated man of character, of sterling worth. So it is not easy to become a Swayam Sevak. To become a Swayam Sevak, you have to change your life to fit in yourself into the movement of this mighty organization called Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh. And to bring out that change, what inspires you? This Bhagavad Gita inspires us. And what is its demand? Demand is you have to dedicate your life. You have to give more hours for this work. You have to be selfless. You cannot think of only yourself. It is said, man outwardly is of two hands, two eyes, one nose, one mouth, two ears, two legs. That is the form of man or woman. So a person who has got two hands, two ears, etc., he can be a man or woman. So that is man outwardly. But inwardly, man is he who has developed into the level of his choice. If he thinks only about himself, not at all about others, even with these hands, ears, and nose, he is called an individual man. If that very man develops its individuality, extending it to the society or village he lives, he can be called a societal man. Similarly, if he further expands his individuality to the extension of national boundaries, he can be called a national man. So we can rightly say Mahatma Gandhi is a national man. Dr. Hedgewar is a national man. Guruji Golwalkar is a national man. And in our own villages, there are good selfless people working for the society and caste. They have not risen up or expanded themselves to national man, but they are societal man or societal men. Then other person is there, not thinking about any other person, but only about his family. So he cannot be called a societal man. Nevertheless, he can be called a family man. Though he belongs to family, he doesn't worry about his children and wife. He thinks about only himself. Then he can be called a selfish man. So man inwardly is different. A man, hands, ears, nose, mouth remaining same, a man can be differently called selfish man, individual man, societal man, national man, and a universal man we can call. And the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh wants an individual man to get expanded to national man. And that national man is called Swayam Sevak. So, individual man to national man, before one joins Sangh, though a man of good character, not at all a bad individual, without any bad habits, but he may be individual man. Need not be selfish, he may be individual man. And he may think of his caste, okay, so he can be a caste man. But when he leaves his caste identity, when he leaves his expands his family identity, and expands it to be co-equal with the nation, then he becomes a national man. Then when China attacks our northern border, he can't sleep here. Actually, China must not have attacked an inch of his compound in this village. Still, he doesn't get sleep because China has entered into our country. So he thinks of our country. He doesn't think of my village and my compound. So the expansion of my village, my country to my nation is called Swayam Sevakatva, for which we come into Sangha. So that expansion is given to us by this very color. Just I told you, become sannyasi anywhere in the world, you have to take to Geruva cloth. Similarly, with this Geruva cloth as our Guru, we can become Swayam Sevaks, whether we belong to Kerala, Tamil Nadu, or Jharkhand, or Uttarakhand. So it's inclusive, totally inclusive, all comprehensive, all embracing. So Bhagavad gives us a national identity. And to worship that on this day is a great virtue. It is a great boon given to us by God. Great boon. So on this day, we worship our flag, which we have taken as a Guru. And that day is Vyasa Purnima, the birth of Vyasa, which falls on today. And this year, especially because of this corona lockdown and everything, our whole organization has decided to divide the organizational two aspects. Guru Puja function to be today itself, and because of other difficulties, financial, moving and all, the Guru Dakshina part of the function on Raksha Bandhan day. So, for the Guru Puja we have assembled today, and I have tried to explain to you how the function came up in Sangha, and why did Dr. Hedgewar choose Bhagava color, and out of that what is the significance of Bhagava color according to Bharat culturally, spiritually, historically and practically, and organizationally also. And of all these things make Bhagavad Dhwaj our Guru, and that is in short the meaning and purpose of Guru Puja as understood by Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. I think I explained enough, and I must have been very clear to you, and I think I should now stop my Baudik. So with all my love and affection to you, I close my thoughts today. Namaste.